Hey guys, I'm Katie Bertrand, owner of So Cute by Katie in Louisville, Kentucky, and today I'm going to do a sewing tutorial on altering a men's sport coat. So I had a customer that the jacket was just kind of baggy in the body because their men's shoulders tend to be a little bit broader than their waist, so it needs to be taken in. So what I've done is I've already pinned this on my customer, and I just wanted to show you how to do this. So if you have a client come in, you will want to take it down the center seam. Now some coats have a vent in the center. This one actually has it on the sides. It's still still tacked right here, so I'm not going to take it apart. So this was a little bit easier to take down the, pull it in down the center seam. Now, if you have a vent, what you'll want to do is you'll still want to try to see what you can get pulled out through the center seam, but occasionally you may have to go to the side seams. Or if you really just can't pull enough out of the center seam and there is that vent at the bottom, then go ahead and go to the sides. But what you want to do is you'll start up here. I'm going to angle this so you can see what I'm pulling out. Because right here it fits really good across the shoulders. So we're going to just kind of start pulling it out. So pull it out and see where the bulkiness starts. So on this person, it was about right here. And then I'm just putting a pin all the way down, and it's getting, I'm pulling more as I go down. So just to give you an idea, as I start at the top, I've got about a ½ inch. And then at the second pin, I've already got to an inch. And now I'm at an 1.5 inches all the way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tailor's chalk, and I'm going to just rub it over where the pin is underneath the fabric, because that's right on that line. And I'm going to do this on both sides. So as you can see, I'm making my little chalk marks right where that pin is. And then I'll do the same thing, because I can push the pin forward and kind of mark top and bottom where that pin is. That way I've got my pin placement marked, and then I can take the pins out. Now, this is about a ½ inch out. I'm going to have to taper it and get to that ½ inch mark right here. I'm going to go ahead and take the pins out, because I've got my placement marked. And as you can see my chalk marks on either side here. Go ahead and take this off the dress form. So you can see my chalk marks right there. So now, how to take this in? Since you have to go all the way down, and everybody's body shape is different. Sometimes you may not take it all the way in, especially on a woman. You might just pull it in through the center. They might be a little wider through the hips, so you may not go all the way down. But since we are going all the way down, at the bottom hem, I'm going to undo the lining from the coat right here at the center seam, because we'll have to take in both. Just get your seam ripper, put it right in, right where that meets, and open up the lining. This has actually got a couple rows of stitching, so some things come apart easier than others. So I will give you a tip. That's why sometimes as people ask for pricing, you might want to be more in a ballpark area than set in stone, because it's usually getting things apart that takes longer than putting it back together. Okay, so I've got this open a decent amount on either side, so I've got room to take it in. Now I want to open the center seam of the lining right here, because we're going to pull the jacket through the lining and take it up. If I get a hold of this lining. Got a dog in the room. Okay, let's see here. Getting it started. But you want to give yourself some room to be able to get into that inner seam here. Okay, so now I've got the lining right in the center back open. Now I made these chalk marks, and what I will do, sometimes this is easier, especially if this is your first time doing, go ahead and put pins and make sure you don't catch the seam allowance right here. Shut that door. One minute. Sorry about that, guys. A little distraction from the dogs. Okay, so right where my chalk mark is, right here, I'm just putting my pins in there because when I pull this through, I can't see my chalk mark, so this just gives me my guide from the inside, and then that way we can pin it. You can also measure if that's easier for you. I'm just going to give you a couple options because there's more than one way to do this. Okay, so I've got pins on all my chalk marks all the way down. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the jacket through the lining opening. Oh, I forgot, I didn't tell you all how to do this. Where's my little... You want to get your hem gauge, and if you remember my first pin right here, I can show you that. Right on the seam is a 1/2 inch. So I already know I can go right here and pull in a 1/2 inch. And then my next one was 1 inch. And then the next one is 1.5 inches. So you can always measure. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm pulling the jacket through the lining. And then I'm going to grab my seam, get it all flat, but I can now see these pins, and I can feel them, and they're lined up. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin on this side, and then I'll go ahead and grab those other pins and take them out. But that way I know I'm on those lines and I've matched it up. And then we'll just work our way down. That way you can pull the jacket through, get this all smoothed out. I can see my pin right there. I feel the two pins, they're right on top of each other, so that's good. And then I'll reach through here and pull these out. And you want to pull these out because you don't want them to get all caught up in there as you continue to pin and then forget to get them out and possibly sew them up in the seam. That would not be good. My next location. ones here. Okay, so now you can see I've got my line, and I'm going to sew and just follow those pins. Now at the very top, pull this all through the lining. You need to taper this. You kind of have to take a running start. So as you see, my pin, this is the first one, is a 1/2 inch. You can't just start here because it'll have a big gap. So I'm going to kind of start up pretty high. You know, let's measure. So probably if I get kind of a running start about 5 inches, I'm going to start on the original seam right here, and then just gently ease my way out, so it's, you know, not just a big jump, and then that way it will lay nice and smooth, just as if it was the original line. I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine. I'm going to just give myself a running start about 5 inches, probably, you know, from the top, from the butt of the pins. I'll give you an idea of what we're doing here. And then I will just aim for the pins that I have in place. You want to take a few stitches and definitely backstitch. And I'm just going to follow my line of pins. And take your pins out as you come to them. And you'll want to kind of smooth the fabric out, make sure you're not getting any wrinkles, and then just follow the line of your pins. All the way down, doing a little back stitching at the bottom. So now that we have created our stitch line, right there, we need to open up our seam, our original seam, so that it will lay flat. So let's go ahead and do that. Just get your seam ripper, just stick it right in between the seam to cut the threads. So what I'm doing, I'm just going to show you, getting this right in between the two layers, and if you kind of hold it, and if you have a sharp seam ripper, be careful not to cut your fabric, but just gently give it a push, and then, you know, break a few threads, and it will just, if you kind of hold it together, kind of hold it tight, it seems to go a little smoother. But as you can see, I'm opening this up, and then we're going to want to iron this so that it lays flat, because you don't want to have all that bulk in the back like that. And then just open this up all the way. Okay? So now what you've done is you've opened up that seam. We will press all of this flat. But we also need to take up the lining. Now you don't necessarily need to take up the lining all the way, but you have to, like all the way top to bottom like we did this, but you definitely need to do it at the bottom a good portion, because when we close up the hole we can kind of fold it over and press it. So at the bottom, from the original stitch to where I stitched, it came back into 1 inch. So this is where the bottom of the jacket and the lining, I had opened it. So now we need to take up that seam so that we can close it up and it matches. Because right now, let me show you. We're going to sew this back together right here. But it doesn't fit. So we need to take this in. You can see how it's all wavy. So we got to take out the excess that we just took out on the top so that it will fit back in. So on the lining, you can see the stitching. I'm going to come in 1 inch. And just use your hem gauge. Put your pin in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch from the bottom up, and I'm going to kind of taper it back to where I have my opening, because when I top stitch that close, I'll be able to fold that over and take in that excess. But you also want to make sure you want this to fit at the bottom, but this allows you to not take in too much lining, and so it's too tight when the person wears it. So they've still got some room, when they're moving their arms and whatnot. Now you can see where I've stitched and where the original stitch is, and I'm going to unstitch this just like we did on the top portion and open up the seam and press it so that it will lay flat. Well, if I can get a hold of this little slick fabric. Turn this facing me, and I'm just going to open up the lining. This just helps reduce any bulk. Now, if you wanted to, you could, cut some of it out if you needed to, which you can easily do. But if you want to make sure that they may need to have it let out at some point in time, then it's probably best just to leave the fabric in there. But it's up to you. I could totally, trim that off and just open it. Okay, so let's open that, and then this seam will need to be pressed as well. But now when I go back here to the bottom to sew up, my seams will now match. Now I have not officially pressed this. I would press this before you do this, but I can hold it open. So I'm making sure that my seam is nice and open and flat. I'm going to go ahead and just put a pin right here to hold those so that they don't get bunched up, because I'm going to go back in and press it. But we've taken up just the same amount, so it matches up very nice. So now, like I showed you before, there's no waviness from the lining. So now it matches up, and we're going to stitch right here across the bottom, and that will close up the bottom. When you open this up, you'll see your stitch line, so you'll see where you need to sew it back. Okay, so that is all stitched. Now, what you'll need to do is take this to the ironing board. You want to carefully press this open and press open your seam, and then do it to the lining as well. I'm not going to do that on camera. You all can sure figure that out, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this back through. So now our seam is put back together. You can kind of feel a little bit of the chalk marks where they meet. Now you're wondering, what about the big hole in the lining? Well, that's next. So we have this opening right here. And usually there's always, a folded piece. It's not finished or anything. So what we're going to do is we're just going to top stitch that closed. So I'm just going to pick it up, and if you'll see, there's quite a bit of excess folded over. So if you hold it from where it's opened, and we did taper it a little bit, and just grab it, I'm just going to put a couple pins, and I'm going to top stitch that right where it is, and just close up that hole. So my opening is from here to here. I'm just going to run a little top stitching right there, and that will close up the hole. And that is how you take in your jacket. So I'm not going to actually stitch it because I need to go back in and press it. But now you have your jacket. It fits across the shoulder area. Put it back on our little mannequin here. But once we press this, the person's wearing it will fit nice and smooth here, and then it will taper in and fit just perfect around the waist area. Something else I did forget to mention is when you are fitting somebody, make sure the jacket is buttoned. That way you're not pulling too much. So make sure that you do have that button. But that is how you take in the back of a men's suit jacket or sport coat. So again, this is a little bit easier because we didn't have the welt in the, or the vent in the center seam. It's actually on the sides of the jacket. So we didn't have to worry about that. So if you do, and depending on how big the jacket is, if they're very broad, athletic build people, may be very broad and very narrow waisted. So you may need to take in here, but you also may need to come in over here on these underarm kind of princess line seams under the arm. So you may have to do 3, one center seam and 2 side seams. So it just depends, how much you need to take in. And if you do have a vent, you can still try to take out as much as you can. You'll just need to taper to the vent and then stop right above it, because you don't want to try to remove that or take in too much to where that's not hanging correctly. So that will just kind of determine how much you take from the center or if you need to go to the sides. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please put a comment below and let me know. I'll be happy to help you. Or you can always email me at socutebykatie@gmail.com. Have a great day.